So in 1962, the Decca Recording Company issued this statement as they rejected a rather new band called the Beatles. We don't really like their sound, and besides, guitar music is on its way out. In 1943, Thomas Watson, the president of IBM, said that there was a world market for maybe 5 computers. And in 1977, Ken Olsen, the founder, president, and chairman of the Digital Equipment Corporation, said, "There's no reason anyone would ever want to have a computer in their own home." In 1893, Lord Kelvin of the Royal Society, which is Britain's oldest scientific society, issued the statement that X-rays would soon be proven to be just a hoax and of no value. And then in 1878, a commission of the British Parliament issued a report saying that this electric light bulb by Thomas Edison was unworthy of any time or attention by any practical or scientific person. And then in 1899, Charles Duell, who was the commissioner of the United States Office of Patents, said that everything that could be invented has already been invented. So there you go. Thank goodness Charles Duell was wrong. Nothing could have been further from the truth. Just imagine all of the things that have been dreamed of, thought about, created, and invented since 1899. So at the very least, it seems like Charles Duell did not understand something very basic about what it means to be human, because there is something in the human spirit that just yearns to learn, to understand, to seek knowledge, to create, and to invent, to explore the whole world of possibilities. So on this morning, when we turn once again to the story about that baby born in a stable in Bethlehem, we look to the wise men who were committed to knowledge, to understanding, to research, those men who journeyed in order to get to this stable. We turn our attention to them, and specifically to their inquisitive and curious minds. I think it's safe to say that in this day, there are a lot of words out there. Words are swirling around us all the time, with emails, with texts, with Facebook posts, with tweets, with news reports, with books, with magazines, conversations, robocalls on our phones. Words are around us all the time. And yet it seems like it's even a greater challenge to find in those words wisdom and truth. Where is there wisdom and truth? So this morning, as we turn our attention to these wise men, let's journey with them as they seek to find wisdom and truth. And so who were these wise ones? As is so often the case with biblical characters, we don't know an awful lot about them. There are not a lot of facts available to us. We don't know where they were from. We don't know how long it took them to get to Bethlehem. We don't even really know how many of them there were. We know how many gifts they brought. But the one piece of information that we do have about these wise men is that they were interested in the stars. And they understood that somehow the stars in heaven were connected to life on earth. And so they were committed to researching, to knowing and understanding what that was all about. And so when there was a new brilliance in the heavens, they just had to go. They had to learn. They had to study. They wanted to understand what the connection might be between that brilliance and something that was going on here on earth. And so they went to research and to understand, because they thought something new is breaking in, and we've got to go find out what that's all about. The star was pulling at them to go, to know, to understand. There's a boy who was flying a kite one day, and the kite had gotten so far aloft that you could barely see it. An adult passing by the boy said, "How do you know your kite's still up there?" And the boy said, "Because I feel the pull of it." The wise men felt the pull of that star to go. There is something in the human spirit, a pull for us to know and to understand, to research, to find facts, to learn more. And it's that pull that can bring us towards wisdom, God's wisdom, the pull to know and to understand, where then we can make good and faithful choices. So there is a kind of wisdom that comes from research, from facts, and from science. A kind of wisdom that we can know and understand, a kind of wisdom that comes from understanding that there is always more to learn. We don't know it all yet. There's always more to learn. There's wisdom in that. The wise men understood there was something about stars and life. And so they went to understand it more fully. There's always more to learn. I shared this story before, but it's about medical treatment back in the 1600s. King Charles II was the king of England, Ireland, and Scotland, and he fell very ill, and there was a record kept of his clinical treatment. And it started out by saying that a pint of blood was extracted from the royal right arm, then a half pint of blood from the royal left shoulder, which was followed by a medicine given that would help to empty the contents of his stomach. And then the royal head was shaved, and a blister was applied, and then there was a sneezing powder given, and then at the very end, 40 extracts of material from the human skull was given to the king, and he died. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm awfully glad that that's really not how medicine is continued to be treated, that there are people who have wanted to research and study the human body and disease and its treatment. So I'm glad that there have been a significant number of medical advances, although I'm sure some of us have felt like we've been treated like King Charles when we were at the doctor. But there is more to learn. There's always more to study. And there's wisdom in understanding that. I mean, and then we can make good choices when we look at facts and scientific data and what people continue to learn. I mean, think about it. Right now, the vast majority of climate scientists say that global warming is happening, and it is having a damaging effect on our world. If we listen to those facts, if we listen to that research, then we can make good and positive and wise choices about how to care for this fragile world of ours. There is wisdom to be had, wisdom to hold on to from science, from facts, from research. And there is wisdom to be gained by looking deep into the human heart and doing all we can to understand that. There is wisdom in looking what makes us human, how we work, how the human heart, how our emotions, how we feel, how all of that functions. There's wisdom in listening to that and understanding it. Those wise men knew that there was some kind of evil lurking within Herod's heart, and so they went home by another way. There's wisdom that comes from looking at what is deep and profound in the human heart and soul. King Solomon was the king of Israel in 900 BCE, and he was known as one of the wisest kings of all of Israel. And there's a story about a time when he offered a judgment. And I'm going to give the two women in the story names just because it's easier to follow the story that way. But if you look it up in the Bible, these women don't have names. But there were two women, Rachel and Sarah, we'll call them, and they lived together. They were both pregnant, and they both gave birth to their children just a couple of days apart. They both had sons. But unfortunately, one night when Rachel was sleeping, she rolled over upon her son and suffocated him, and he died. Well, Rachel was so taken by her grief, and she looked over and she saw Sarah sleeping with her newborn son, and so she switched the babies. But when Sarah woke up, she looked and was grieved to see that her son had died, but then when she looked deeply at him, she realized it wasn't her baby that she was holding. And so she accused Rachel of making the switch. So the two women went before Solomon and asked him to make a judgment about what to do. And so he asked the women to present the live baby. And they did. And Solomon said, the only fair thing to do is to cut the baby in half and give each of you half of the baby. And of course, Sarah immediately said, no, let the boy live. And so Solomon knew who the true mother was. There was something about that story that's really terrible, and yet it says something about Solomon really understanding the human heart and really understanding compassion and love. There is something to be gained, great wisdom from looking at the human heart and then knowing how best to relate to one another, how to care for one another. We can make wise decisions and choices in our relationships when we look deep within the hearts of others around us. I no longer fall into this category, but when I was the mother of young children, I often felt judged when I was out in public about how I was handling my children, especially if I was at a restaurant or a grocery store and Matt or Anna wasn't behaving like perfect angels, which of course Anna always was. Matt's back in California, so I'll just talk about her. I don't know that I was being judged, but I felt it. And as I listen to parents of young children today, it seems to me that many of them feel that even more strongly, that people feel very free to share their criticisms about how people are raising their children, and that it's a difficult thing to do. And what we know is that raising children is a really hard job. And what people need as they raise their children is affirmation. They need support. They need love and care. That's what we do when we dedicate parents and small children, is we say, we know that this is really important work that you're doing. It's hard work, and we as a congregation will be here to support you. And yet so often parents feel so criticized. So I was really taken the other day when I was reading a Facebook post, and it actually appeared on somehow through the singer Pink's Facebook page, and Pink is known for her parenting wisdom. And so this was a response. So I'm reading it because any of you could go look at this Facebook post, so I better read it to make sure I get it right. One night 12 years ago, so this isn't Pink, this is somebody else who was writing on her page. One night 12 years ago, I was at a casual food restaurant, and my youngest was throwing food, my older ones bickering, and my husband was embarrassed. An older, beautiful woman, 75 or 80 years old, came up to me, held my hand, and said, "Don't expect perfection. Your little one is exploring and growing. And remember, even Jesus threw food and was a baby." She kissed my cheek, and that moment impacted me so deeply. I always stop to encourage mothers with young children. It is fun to think about Jesus throwing food off of his table. But that's wisdom. That's wise choices. It's looking at the human heart, knowing and understanding what people most need, and choosing how to relate to them. So as we begin to say farewell to our Christmas story and to the stable, we think of the wise men who were pulled by a star to know and to understand, to seek knowledge and wisdom. And we can do the same. We can seek knowledge and wisdom because there's wisdom to be gained in research and facts and science, and there's wisdom to be gained in understanding the human heart. May we enjoy this journey. Amen.